Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of Truth and Share. I'm your host today, Rohit Krishna, joined by Dan Plashkes, co-founder and CEO. How are you today, Dan?
Good, Rohit. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Of course.
Today, folks, we are going to be discussing social media in business and how it impacts the business landscape and what leaders can learn from using and being active on social media. So we'll jump right in. Dan, number one question is how important is it for leaders in business today to use social media to understand their target market?
So, Rohit, listen, it's very hard to get into.
Right.
You wonder, but the value is huge. It's actually quite astonishing the number of CEOs that are not involved. It's if you believe it, they say that a CEO is responsible for 40% of the value of his company. That's because he's building a brand.
Right.
And there's no better way to represent your brand and yourself than through social media.
Mm-hmm.
The real difficulty, from my perspective, is how do you get involved? In my case, it wasn't something I had in business school. It wasn't a tool I had in my young days.
Right.
I really, through the power of observation, I really think it's phenomenal, social media. I mean, I actually love it. But it's a job. But in the meantime, it is something you have to learn, and it's something I actually learned, in my case, from a younger generation.
Okay. And so you'd say it is very important.
I think it's critical.
Okay.
I really do.
And what are some of the habits that you have in your day-to-day in using social media? How do you use it to influence your business?
It's funny because I think I'm a reasonably creative, left-handed guy, but at the end of the day, I have a German background, which said you do things at set times. So you got to set the time up. It's a commitment, and it's like a discipline, and you've got to be disciplined in business to be able to be successful. And I think that this just adds, and the reason that 60% of all CEOs are not doing it isn't because they don't see the opportunity. They may not fully understand the gravity of the importance, but it's because it takes time.
Right.
And so I can't tell you how much time I dedicate. The first thing is I use different social medias, which I think we'll talk about.
Right.
But I garner information. I mean, it's amazing that, within seconds, you could be getting information off a Twitter. But it's really important, I think, to set up the time to do it. And you can't just do it once a week.
Right.
As you know, here at S&P Data, we're actually working on where even all the executives of the team, we have a calendar. That calendar is both business posts and your personal posts. We want our clients and prospects to understand who we are.
And employees.
And sorry, I missed that. Critical. As you know, Rohit, a lot of the people in this company at the employee level I've met.
Right.
And the way I meet it is I talk to them on social media. Just critical. And I think there's a bias to success of those that are on social media.
Right. And so we've talked a lot recently, in our management meetings about, our kids, right? Getting to know the families and whatnot. And, one of the questions that came up was how important is it to use your kids' knowledge of social media to understand what is effect, hot in the marketplace today?
So it's interesting. I mean, I've told you this. I'm the chairman of a company my kids started called Owner's Box, and It's been teaching me. I mean, I have a 23-year-old kid. He's my eldest kid, and he's teaching me about marketing, and he's teaching me about social media. Stuff I never even did, like, how do you edit, small things like that, but important so that I can get my own content out.
Yep.
I think it's really important not to have someone write your own content. Right? Ghostwriters.
And I think that's an important point. A lot of the biggest social media influencers out there who have families, they learn from their kids too, right?
So unbelievable.
What's hot in the market, what apps they might be using, right? It kind of paves the way for, even investment decisions in the future, right?
Rohit, you love that example. I gave my kids $1,000 each, and they went to, in the case of the broker that we use, a good friend of ours. He was my kid's quarterback coach, had a great college football career. And he decided to work. He worked for Morgan Stanley, then he opened up his own practice. So he sat down with each kid and he asked them one question. I want you to pick 5 stocks of things that you use every day. So I gave you the example of Snapchat.
Yep.
None of, if you're 25 or above, I always say this, it's not quite true, but it's pretty close. You don't use Snapchat, or if you do, you're casual. And I hate to use uniform statements, but it's pretty true. It's the de facto standard. It's the one social platform you don't take away from a kid.
Right.
They don't even want you on it.
Yeah.
So, if you talked at the time, financial market analysts, they would look at it and say, it doesn't have a great revenue model. It's going to get crushed by Twitter. It's going to get crushed by anything else. And so I said, that was one of the stocks they invested in. They invested, very little money, but they still invested at $10. The stock's at 45 today. Yeah. And I still tell them, don't sell it, because one of two events. Someone's going to actually buy that for a premium. I mean, it's just too, you have to understand. So the point you're making is the kids can show us what to do, whether even from a customer support. I ask my kid, tell me about, who isn't doing a great job in customer support. He goes, well, Dad, I order food and it's horrible. Yep. And I order shoes from a service and you can't reach someone with a question. I mean, they're spending so little, but they're telling you. Yeah,
the surface doesn't tell you, exactly what's going on, right? It's the user experience, and who better to get that from than the customer directly, right?
100%. So, so many people are open in our business to, tweet us and the minute you get tweet us, they give you a chat bot. Right? So, I mean, it doesn't get you anywhere. But anyways,
absolutely.
Great. It's really such a great time to be alive. To think that the youth are showing us the future, and we enjoy it. And I gave you the analogy offline. How many of us used to rely on that phone, and I used to try to call my teenage kids. They wouldn't pick up the phone. If I wanted to reach them, I had to text them. And now I prefer texting.
Yeah, exactly.
So try social media. It's the same way. You find, if you have the right personality, you really like it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So, that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, what platforms are important for business leaders to be on or using today? Because there are so many, right? Well, how do you decide where to start?
By the way, from an advertising point of view, Facebook dominates. They dominate small business. Kevin O'Leary, a great Canadian, I might add, he talks about how Facebook drives most of their revenue. Mm-hmm. And so it's a dominating position in small business. You've even got a Shopify, of course, but I think that you need to find your platforms that appeal to you. By the way, what I love about social media, once you're on it, Rohit, I know what you're doing on the weekends. I see you post Leo. I stay in contact with people that I haven't seen in 20 years. Right. Some of the timeline stuff, that you posted something. It's just it really is incredible. And I really, but you asked from a business perspective, I think that all these platforms, I think you have to understand your target audience. I was telling you about Owner's Box. Right. They had spent most of their money on Facebook and Instagram, obviously the same properties. Right, but they're targeting a bit of a younger, and they went and did some Snapchat, and it did incredible. In our case, I think, Twitter is a main channel for picking up on customer sentiment. When we look at what the customers are saying, when we look at what customers are saying, we always, go to Twitter and see what they're saying and stuff like that. Absolutely. But, I think you customize it to your target market. You have to you should not, even those 40% that are active, they're only on one channel. Right. You've got to be on multi-channels. Even within Facebook, you should be on Instagram.
So there's no real one size fits all, really, right? It depends on your product or your service that you're marketing. It depends on your business model. Every platform has different pluses.
I think that's right. By the way, but the one thing is you shouldn't just be on one platform.
Agreed. Okay. Right. And so, with companies or leaders who are on social media today, is it important to have rules of engagement of how to interact with potential customers, potential employees? How do you kind of go about using social media?
Listen, if you've raised children, you know that social media has a lot of good and it has a lot of bad. Right. And the social pressures that it brings are very, very tough. Right. Someone can post something that embarrasses a kid and it goes to 500 people. Yeah. Even in the days, if you've ever had kids, I mean, I experience this through children. It's funny, but my kids would announce they're having a party, or their friends would, and 1,000 people come over. It's really crazy, but it also tells you the opportunity if you flip it around, right? So the opportunity is so incredible. I look at it as, I'm not in social media so that Dan Plashkes will have 1 million followers. I'm in it as a way of, our voice. It's our voice of the customer. It's our voice of our employees.
Yep.
And it's really got a huge return in that way. It's a way of filling up, in our point, our appearance funnel.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, I think it needs to be relegated, and it needs to be relevant as well, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And so in what ways do you think social media has influenced or impacted small business?
Yeah. So I think, by the way, I think that everything's changed with COVID-19. It's really important.
Right.
The way I use social media, go look at my Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
On the weekends, I talk personal.
Right, it's different content.
Into the business. Yeah, but I think that people want to know more about you. So now let's apply that to small business. Again, same like the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. The bad of COVID is these small businesses have been hammered.
Right.
The good of it is social media allows you to market that you could potentially get something viral.
Right.
And you could go well beyond your personal geography of that one location. So the challenge is immense.
Right.
But I think it's a serious opportunity as well.
And they still need to know how to use it, though, right?
They need to know how to use it. That's the challenge. So the challenge is they need to know how to use it. How do people get to their page? How do they develop an e-commerce? But you got things like Shopify that says just plug into us, and you can compete with Amazon.
Yeah.
But now the question is, how do people understand about your personal brand? How do they know? And that's really difficult. And that's where you have to, the rules of engagement in social media, you need to be consistent. You need to reflect your values. And you need to be on as many platforms as possible. It's not something that's going to pop up in a day.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. And anything else you want to add around?
No, I mean,
social
listen,
media?
I think that it really has changed the way you can market. And so, you asked me, and we've had in previous discussions, we've talked about financial literacy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need the money you used to need to start a business. You just need as much perseverance as you always did. I mean,
100%.
social media, you could start, there are stories of kids that are doing something on YouTube and you get a bunch of followers and they pay you. There's something there, if that's your thing. But it's an incredible tool. It's a great way. I don't want to miss this. It's a great way for talking to your employees.
Right.
And letting them know about you.
Yeah, ultimately, I think you need to follow your passion, and if you're passionate about something, you'll find your niche just as a result of that. Right?
And social media becomes that platform for following
and
your passion.
Yeah, exactly. People will, you'll find your audience because of your passion that you pursue, right?
Right.
There's a niche for everything, right? It's just a matter of finding.
I couldn't agree with you more. Rohit, listen, it's such an exciting time to be out there.
Agreed.
Everything's moving so quickly. And by the way, let's look at a new social media. There are so many of them, but one we didn't talk about is TikTok.
Yeah.
We use TikTok at S&P. It's really big. We use TikTok at S&P for competitive, to build brand, reinforce the S&P brand, but to build team.
But they smaller sort of sole proprietor shops who maybe are looking to just promote their personal brand, they get picked up by bigger organizations, right? If the niche is correct,
for sure.
and they give you products to market on behalf of their organization too, right? It's huge. The opportunities are endless.
Rohit, there was a great story I was telling Gregory about a family-owned book business.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the name. I don't want to guess at the name. It's one of two in my mind. They basically wrote that they were going to be out of business because of COVID-19 if people didn't come in. So that they've opened up. They wrote an email to all their customers, and said and they published it on a social site, and so that social site got out there and people started passing it around. At the end of the day, they took more e-commerce orders. It was a brand new site for e-commerce. They exceeded any single day book orders they'd done in the 120-year life of the business.
Insane.
So one, people have a passion. Two, the word spread through social, right?
Yeah.
Think about the old days. You don't read your email. You don't read mail.
Right.
this is really important for getting your message. And you have to have something to say, and it's got to be relevant.
Perfect. Yeah, it's an important time, and it's great to see the impact across any business.
It
right?
really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you, Dan, for
Thank you, Rohit.
providing your insights. And to all our viewers at home, thank you for tuning in. Remember, the Truth and Share podcast, everything you always wanted to know but were afraid to ask. And remember, folks, the truth shall set you free. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching.